Well, 3 decades of pain, 6 surgeries, and 9 years of trying to get pregnant finally has a happy ending for a Connecticut mother. Tonight, she is sharing her story of perseverance and resilience. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Erin LeBeau.
And I'm Tamsin Fidel. Well, what started out as painful periods as a child was diagnosed as fibroids years later, but that was only the beginning of her uphill battle.
Yeah, what followed was years of overcoming one obstacle after another. So please join us in welcoming Shauna McDonald and her doctor, Dr. Charles Asher Walsh. He is a Mount Sinai OBGYN. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so Shauna, we're going to start with you. So you say that your complications actually started when you were 10 years old. Kind of walk us through what you were experiencing and how did you finally get some relief?
So at 10 years old, I got my period. It was extremely painful. I bled a lot, just continuous bleeding, a lot of pain. My mother brought me to the OBGYN where they finally found that I had fibroids. There's not really much to do at that age. They just treated me medically with birth control pills. So I took that for years and years until one day I was at work and I suffered excruciating pain that led me to have to go to the emergency room, where I ended up having a chocolate cyst that ruptured. And from there, I had surgery after surgery. And I eventually was diagnosed with endometriosis along with the fibroids.
Wow, you're so young when everything started. So those complications started at 10, they continued right up into your 30s. You were diagnosed. What happened after that?
So I met Dr. Asher Walsh. I was referred to him by a physician for the surgery that he does, where he removed all of the fibroids from my uterus. That was the beginning. So that was in my 30s. Let's fast forward to me getting married and trying to have a baby and just continuously failing, cannot get pregnant, and resulting in more surgery for the endo and for the fibroids. So I ended up having 17 feet of my bowel cut off due to me having adhesions from so many surgeries with my intestines. Still couldn't get pregnant through IVF, which I did a second time. And at that point, I felt so despondent. I was just so hurt and tired. And I don't want to say I gave up, but I was just in a dark place in terms of having a baby. And then I came back to New York and I met Dr. Asher Walsh again, and he saved me.
Okay. All right, so doctor, talk to us a little bit about that. How does that diagnosis and everything that she was going through impact the fact that she was trying to have a baby?
Well, fibroids can play a big role in preventing pregnancy, especially when they affect the inside cavity of the uterus. They also, in those cases, can cause really heavy periods, more painful periods, a lot of cramping. And so those types of fibroids really can prevent implantation of the pregnancy. They can increase the risk of miscarriage significantly. And then later on, they can increase the risk of preterm delivery, which can be a real problem as well. So she was sort of facing all of these issues.
So I understand, Shauna, the fibroids came back, is that right?
The fibroids did resurface. In 2019, I suffered with more pain and a lot more heavy bleeding, where Dr. Asher did do a procedure and he removed fibroids at that time. He did tell me that there were some fibroids that he would not be able to get to, and at that time it would be that we would just leave it until it caused a problem, which it did in 2020. I started a period 1 month and it never ended for months. I bled continuously. And, you know, upon doing more and more diagnostic tests, he told me what kind of fibroids I did have and that I needed to actually have another open myomectomy, which we scheduled for later that year. And that's when I had surgery in October of 2020, and he removed 78 fibroids from my uterus.
So, doctor, can you kind of break down for us what fibroids are and how do you kind of treat them or remove them?
Sure. So fibroids are muscle tumors, basically. The uterus is primarily made up of muscle, which has the goal of contracting and forcing a baby out when it's time to deliver. And sometimes these muscle tumors go a little haywire and produce these non-cancerous tumors. And so they in themselves are not dangerous, and over half of all women develop fibroids. So just having fibroids in itself shouldn't scare people, but when they affect the inside cavity, they can lead to bleeding problems like Shauna had. They can lead to fertility problems, pain, and then they very often need to be treated. And there's a variety of treatments for fibroids. One of the problems is that women who are hoping to get pregnant don't often volunteer for studies. And so a lot of the new treatments, we don't really know how they affect fertility. So the sort of tried and true surgery where we actually just go in and surgically remove fibroids is often the way we need to go. We try to do it less invasively like we did for Shauna, where we go with a camera up through the vagina into the uterus and just shave away the fibroids on the inside that are causing some of the symptoms, but they don't remove the larger fibroids on the outside. And the only way really to get to those is to go through the abdomen, which Shauna had to go through a few times. So, there are newer treatments, but they really haven't been tested very well for women who want to get pregnant, and that was her dilemma.
Yeah, and so, Shauna, you've been through so much. You're such a warrior, fought through everything. Now you have a beautiful baby boy, correct?
Yes, I do.
How are you doing, and how does it feel after going through all the experiences that you went through?
I'm loving motherhood. I'm so grateful. I'm so blessed. As hard as my journey was, I would go through it again for him, again and again. It took a lot of strength. It was a lot of pain. It was a lot of, crying and just being despondent sometimes. But he was totally worth it, my little blessing.
Oh, well, congratulations. Doctor, before we let both of you go, we want to jump back to fibroids and talk a little bit about that. How does someone even know that they suffer from this, and what should they do?
Well, Shauna's story is a little unique in that it's incredibly rare to have fibroids at such a young age. So I don't want to also panic young girls and young women to think that heavy periods often means fibroids at such a young age, because usually it's other things at a younger age like that. But later on, as you get into your 20s and 30s, heavy periods are probably the most common symptom of fibroids. You can also just feel, weight in your pelvis, a mass, frequent urination, and then fertility problems also can lead to it. So, but the bleeding, sort of abnormal periods, is usually the cause that brings most patients to see us.
Let me ask you this: do they always have to be removed, or are there cases that you don't have to do that?
No, there are newer treatments that are much less invasive. There's the treatment that's probably been along the longest is uterine fibroid embolization, done by radiologists. But newer treatments are even less invasive. Like there's radio frequency treatments like Sonata, where you can basically sort of zap fibroids with electricity essentially and cause them to shrink down. So there are a variety of newer treatments that don't require such invasive treatments, but they really haven't been studied in pregnancy, so that's the problem with those.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Shauna, thank you. Dr. Asher Walsh, thank you both for joining us today and shedding light on this. And congratulations again on your baby boy.
Thank you. Thank you so much.